Just to pick up where we last left off, this chart just kind of shows different thinkers that were writing at the time from different parts of Europe that were doing things that we would say were participating in, um, Enlightenment thinking or influencing the Enlightenment. And so this gives a little bit of perspective. That's still not a lot of people. And so again, this is something that we want to talk about. This is Diderot. We'll talk a little bit more about him. That basically, just as the aristocracy was a small percentage of the population, so were these thinkers. And it's historians also kind of debate and discuss at what point does how much of the common person on the ground, have any relationship to this material being discussed at the time? Probably very little. The illiterate bourgeoisie are going to be, of course, engaging with this. But I do think there's a trickle-down effect. Because as I mentioned now, most of us, I come from a working class family. My grandfather, we could have called a bourgeoisie with blue-collar values, but my household was lower middle class, working class that I grew up in. And yet I'm having access to this knowledge now and being exposed to these ideas. So, there has been a trickle effect. And then there's also a lot of views that people have that sometimes they're not even aware of that are coming from thoughts that are rightly guided or misguided. That's a whole other debate. But many ideas that came from here did trickle down, and they also directly affected our political system that we live in, which then affects all of us. So that's one way we can really pin it down. Okay. So anyhow, there is so much to talk about, and I could focus on many different avenues of this. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to just kind of highlight certain things. And then, again, if you have any questions on more and you want to elaborate, please call me up and talk with me. So we're going to go over themes of Enlightenment thought, religion and morality. So most of them are going to be known for critiquing the church and traditional views of religion. Now, they're going to do it in a way that's different than, let's say, atheist approach that are going to, like Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins, just to name a few. If you're familiar with them, they're very popular in terms of debates on YouTube. You can watch a lot. Christopher Hitchens is dead now, but there was no last minute recanting of his atheism on his deathbed that was reported. He was pretty brutal and vigorous in his approach to this. And these men didn't necessarily take on that. Well, yes and no. Ultimately, I think it's fair to say that a good chunk of Enlightenment thinkers thought that religion was good for the commoner to keep social order. But in reality, they saw it as superstition from the past. And as they became exposed to other cultures, they did get that relativist perspective, right? It's very easy, to believe in our given religions or to believe in atheism is natural. Whatever you grow up with, it seems natural. And if all the grown-ups around you say, of course there's no God, or of course Shiva exists, or of course Jesus is Lord and Savior, of course, if these things are everyone around you, then it's a natural thing to just have knowledge based on authority. This is understood. And then when you get exposed to a better understanding of other religions, like they had of Islam and of Asian concepts from like Confucianism, or the Tahitians, we'll see about that in a little bit. There then becomes, well, then which one? What then determines whether something's right or wrong? On what premise do we decide this? Right, before, most of the religious wars were between Christians themselves. But what about people who are never even been exposed to Christianity? What do we have to say? Well, the missionaries always knew what they had to say, but I think that there's this all this stuff is really being addressed, and many of them become deists. This is a belief that God created the universe, so they don't deny the existence of God, but they believe that he basically made everything and then just walked away. Okay, that he set laws in motion, but he doesn't intervene. In other words, when the gospel says that every sparrow that falls is counted in all the hairs on your head, or in the Quran it says that God is close to man as the jugular on his neck. This is what the deists are rejecting, this idea. They're saying that when you pray, it's like trying to shout out maybe at an office manager, like talk to your honest office manager from your bed at night while he's off somewhere else. It's to them, but they actually feel that they still believe in God, though, many of them, and reject the notion of being considered atheists. While, as it mentioned here, Holbach is one of this character here is one of the few mentioned that you could really call an atheist, and he called religion pretended science. What you see more consistently from them is really virulent, hatred of the clergy. Well, that makes sense, right? Because we're talking about power. I mean, I know many religious people who loathe clergy from their own religion, but still feel an affinity for their religion. But they don't like the way that the power is used by people, they feel that is abused. And we saw, with Cardinal Richelieu, before, where he wasn't even acting as a cardinal, he was a political engineer. So they would critique these kind of things. And David Hume again is critiquing this, and many of them, I think, it's fair to say, were trying to address an idea of morality outside of religion, in a sense. And it mentions in the text that Hume, in his an inquiry concerning human understanding, challenged the claim of the 17th century rationalist philosopher René Descartes that God implants clear and distinct ideas in our minds. Okay, now Descartes is considered the father of modern philosophy, even though he only really goes back, he still goes back a long time, right, before even David Hume. But he focused on the objective. There was already, almost all of these things they don't come out of a vacuum. You already saw with Descartes, where he's the one that said, I think, therefore I am. He was trying to think, what could I really know? And he really believed that you could know yourself and know that there's a God by pure thought. You don't even need the Bible to do that. And he's not necessarily opposed to the Bible, but he's saying you can do this. And David Hume is going to be more critical of his epistemology, or in other words, his epistemology in philosophy is how one comes to know things. And he's going to say you can't rely on things in that way. And he had this kind of skepticism, not just of religion, but even of how one could understand something, have knowledge about something, and that there's not an innate set of ideas. Okay, there. So that's just one aspect. Themes of Enlightenment thought. Real quick, I want to actually go back to this really quick on religion and morality. Our founding fathers. It's complex. There's a big debate, right, of what the founding fathers felt influence-wise in terms of Enlightenment thought on religion. And I'm going to talk about them also a little bit. I'm talking about the United States founding fathers. Apparently, John Adams, I believe, was more like an evangelical Christian. So some of the founding fathers did take on a more fundamentalist approach to believing in the Bible. Washington is a little more ambiguous, though he was a part of church life in a certain extent. Again, he was religious, same thing. I mean, same as Benjamin Franklin. They looked and felt more like deists, but not really clear. Thomas Jefferson, I would say, was definitely a man of the Enlightenment on many levels and a deist. And he did very controversial things. I don't know if you've heard of Thomas Jefferson's Bible, where he took the Bible and he took a razor blade and he cut out all the miracles that he saw in the Bible, and he just wanted the wisdom, the claimed wisdom that he thought was from the New Testament, and take out the superstition. Some people who try to defend him say, well, what about his support of missionary work for the Native Americans? You can't discount that. But if you look at his works, he thought that you could civilize, natives like the Native Americans by bringing them into Christianity, but that was something they needed to be a part of Western civilization. I think that there's a stronger case to be made that he wasn't just cutting out the miracles because he just wanted the wisdom of Jesus to go straight to the core of it, but there was an outright, at the very least, demoting of the miraculous and a focus on the morality and the ethicalness, which fits into that whole mindset of Enlightenment thought. Okay, so I just kind of wanted to go state that, and I think that those tensions and those contradictions vary within each types of men we call the founding fathers, who were men of this time period and of this class. Many of them bourgeoisie, if you will. Okay, so, and they also were influenced heavily by these thoughts about social justice. And I want to talk a little bit more about this, and I will go into the next lecture. I'll return to this.